Come grow with Stan and James DeFreitas on the Ask Mr. Greenthumb show. We hope to enlighten your senses with new ways to plant healthy greenery. You too can get the Greenthumb blessing. Come grow with Stan and James DeFreitas on the Ask Mr. Greenthumb show.
Hi, I'm James DeFreitas with the Ask Mr. Greenthumb TV series, and today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic called air layering. And what does that mean?
Air layering, or Chinese pot layering, sometimes it's been done for centuries, and it was done in China first, but it was done in other spots of the world too. It's a neat way to propagate plants that are sometimes hard to propagate.
Okay, well that sounds like it's good. I guess we're just going to dive right into this, huh?
Well, we've got our croton here, Codium variegatum.
As I like to say, a crouton.
A crouton. And I also want to show a mint in the avocado as well, something we've showed on other shows before.
Well, before you do anything else, let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Why is this one look so radically different than, say, the ones that I have planted out in front of my home that have the bigger, wider leaf? I mean, what do we do? Why is this got like a crinkly, and is there any reason why it looks different?
It's genetically different. This one's called the mammy croton.
Okay.
As opposed to some of the others. We showed some other varieties before. And I think you pointed
out. I see the card here. It says mammy crouton. And,
or croton, but crouton if we're having soup and salad.
I even like to say it wrong just because it'll help you to remember how to say it right. So crouton to croton is that's the right way to say it.
And the croton is a plant that's used as a house plant often.
Okay.
All over the country. Outside in the deep south and warm areas, it's used as a landscape plant.
Okay, and the reason it's used on the inside is because it's got the wide leaves and it can take less sunlight.
It can take lower light and still survive.
Okay.
And that's important. And it's also kind of a neat plant in that not only will it do that, but as you pointed out, these seem to, in the last cold at your particular house, that it seemed to survive better than the large leafed ones.
Sure, yeah. Well, and the thing, I definitely noticed that, and that was something that was sort of surprising that I brought to his attention, was that for whatever reason, this variety seemed to live. Right, and it was right next to my variety, and they all got cooked. So I have to say, if you're in an area where frost or freezing is going to be an issue, you should certainly consider maybe this variety over the other one if you want to have it as a plant that will stay growing for year after year. So, and as you're picking away through there, what are we doing now?
I'm just taking off some of the leaves on the bottom,
okay,
which I thought I'd save a little time by doing it.
Okay, and why are we doing that?
I'm doing it because what we're going to do is kind of like when we did the graft, we're forcing the issue.
Okay, we're forcing it to produce.
We're going to force it to propagate.
Okay.
And sometimes this is done with plants that are hard to propagate.
Okay.
Let's say a magnolia or a holly are hard to propagate. Crotons aren't that hard to propagate, but it's hard to get one that has a nice big stem. And if we could take this off and pot it, kind of what I think they did here. I think they took 3 small ones, stuck it in this, and said, aha, now you've got a 3-gallon, which is worth 4 times more. So what we're going to try to do on this...
Sounds like a money-making scheme to me.
Well, and it is to a degree. And got to be careful because this is a fairly thin stem.
Well, as long as I'm the one that doesn't have the knife, I'm happy.
Yeah, I figured you'd like that. And then we'll come down about 1 inch below, and we're going to try to take this off all the way around. Okay. And we're going to cut between the two. This is sort of my old grafting knife. What we're trying to do is take this off. I'd like to take the bark off.
Okay.
You can see how I kind of took the bark off here.
Looks like it's chipping away, yeah. So we've got a little piece of the bark that he's taken off of here. And I don't know how interesting that is to look at or not, but...
So we're forcing it so it can't grow back, and that's what it would normally want to do.
Ah, okay. Now, see, when I see, people do this to like trees and stuff, I think, man, that's probably going to kill the tree.
And in some respects, if you girdle a tree, it would.
What's it called again?
Girdling a tree.
That's when they tear off the bark all the way around?
And sometimes people do that because they're trying to kill a tree.
Oh. Well,
but what I'm trying to do is,
we don't do that on this show. We save trees.
Yeah, and we're going to save this tree. We want to plant. I want to take a handful of wet sphagnum moss.
Okay, so what you may not be able to see here is he's taking this looks like insulation material here that you find in your attic, which it is not, and he's putting it in water and making to be completely honest, he looks like he's making a mess, but hey, sometimes
Sometimes you have to make a mess to make something better.
yeah, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
It's kind of like any good cook would tell you that. We have to make a mess and then everything is better.
Put that there.
So we're taking a sphagnum moss, which you can buy at any nursery. I happen to buy this at one of the big box stores, but you could buy it at any nursery garden supply store. And I want it really pretty wet.
Now, why do we want it so wet?
Because it needs to initiate roots.
Okay, and we need water to do that.
Well, if it was real dry, it wouldn't be conducive for it to put a root system out.
Okay, so this is another way of forcing it.
And what we're going to do, and I want you to take some
okay. I can
plastic
handle
wrap.
this meets my technical skills.
You take the wrap there.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is take this area where I've taken the bark off, and we're going to take this around here. Cappy wants to get involved. And we're going to, she's our little grow dog.
Hopefully I don't need a whole lot here.
And we're gonna place that around where I've just put this.
Okay.
Get my fingers out of there.
Well,
and kind of put it around there.
That'd make it really root fast with put some of your fingers in there.
And then I'll hand you one of these ties.
Okay, so what, top and bottom?
Yeah,
or?
top and bottom.
This really does look kind of like a two-man job here.
Well, it's easier with two man.
So how tight does this need to be, just out of curiosity?
Just fairly tight. It doesn't have to be, Houdini tight.
Okay, so no ratcheting tie downs or
But we want something to where when you do this, you'll keep it on here and it'll initiate roots. And in about 4 weeks, we'll see roots coming through the sphagnum moss and you'll see it coming through the plastic.
Okay.
If everything goes right. Put it down there on the bottom.
Okay.
And kind of hold it there in place.
All
And
right.
you can kind of see we've got that kind of circulating around there.
All right, I kind of got mine twisted up here.
If you see it get too dry, you could take the plastic wrap off and
redo it.
put moisture around that sphagnum.
Now, is that tight enough?
That's tight enough.
Okay. And so by producing roots out here, rather than where they traditionally would be down here, what does that do for us?
We can take this whole cutting off and stick it in a container. And, as opposed to a little cutting takes forever for it to grow. And I give that example with, even over here, we have our little avocado pit, which we showed on one of our previous shows. You can see now that it's got a root coming. But that's been about 3 weeks, and it still has the one root.
Sure.
So that's a slow process, starting from seed prop. If we started this from a seed, a little tiny seed, which we could, it would take us maybe 6 months to get a plant this size. So when we take it like this, we're getting a mature plant that we could stick into a gallon-sized container.
And it's ready to go.
And it's ready, you could legitimately sell it.
So again, just kind of like what we did with the grafting, we're basically getting the benefits of something that's already mature, and we're getting something right now.
And that's the advantage to this. Now, we have another plant over here, which we showed previously before too, was a mint.
I remember that, but yeah, it didn't look like much when you were planting it. It was like small little scraggly looking pieces.
And that was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We stuck it into this container and I called it repurposing. Somebody said, no, it's not repurposing. Well, I still think it's sort of repurposing because most people would throw the container out.
Yeah, the thing I would touch on a little bit too is that a lot of people, even when their pot is no longer a hanging basket, a lot of times they just they don't think to reuse it. And so they don't think of taking the handles off that maybe are cracked or dry rotted from being out season after season. And I think by doing it this way, I think it's at least you're reusing the pot in another fashion.
Yeah, and I think we showed in 3 weeks from little tiny cuttings to this size mint, and I've already picked off a few times off of it to use for tea and iced tea and hot tea, just because
I think it's huge. Because if people remember the repurposing video podcast that we did, this was just like tiny little nuggets.
Yeah, they were little tiny 3-inch cuttings.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And it's not just because I'm Mr. Greenthumb.
Well,
it doesn't hurt. But
you gave it a good foundation for sure, and probably put some of this wonderful stuff on it as well.
I did.
So.
I used some dynamite, and you saw me put black cow into it when I mixed up the soil.
Yeah.
So I thought I gave it, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Seeing is believing, so that's there's no question.
And it was nice to show the little seedling on the avocado.
So just to recap here on this, so we're going to put this on here, and then you're telling me in about how many weeks?
Probably about 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to come in and cut it right underneath it.
Okay.
And then we'll take the plastic off, obviously, but it'll be a whole little mass of roots coming into that sphagnum moss.
Okay.
And so we have a mature plant, and we've got Cappy, our little garden dog.
Yeah.
And she's such a little sweetheart. She loves to garden, and we can get her to dig. Boy, we could make millions.
So we're going to cut right underneath the root, and then we'll put it into another pot, putting in some good gardening soil, like Black Cow, and then it'll be its own separate plant.
It'll be its own separate plant, and I figured you need about 3 of these. So
I do.
So I wanted to get 2 more, and then your little area will be filled, because I think before you had almost too many.
Yeah, well now I have none, so Mother Nature saw to that. So
Well, that happens, and that's a good example of it happens.
Right.
We lose plants on occasion.
Right.
We lose people on occasion. But I'm always amazed. People lose, your favorite grandfather or uncle or whoever, and we lose our plants, and they go, oh my God, the plant committed hara-kiri on me. It wanted to die. Well,
sure.
Usually not. It's usually a frost or freeze or insect or fungus.
Or it's the natural life cycle of the plant.
Or yeah, plants have a lifetime just like we have. And there's a time when plants will diminish.
Sure, absolutely.
But this is a great way of getting a large plant. It's been done for hundreds of years, sometimes called Chinese pot layering, sometimes called marcuttage or marcutting. And it's a
Can
practice.
you say that again?
Marcuttage or marcutting, air layering.
Air layering. Air layering. I can remember that one.
Chinese pot layering is another name that you might see if you went to look for
Now,
more
that sounds like you'd have to be out in Colorado to appreciate that.
Well, it might be, yeah. I think it's a different pot layering that they're doing there, but yeah, I got where you're going on it.
Gotcha.
But this is for the legal plants, and of course those others may be legal in most states too now. But you can see that it's a neat operation. To me, it's kind of fun. It's a little bit technical, but you could do this to a limit or a line.
Now that I've seen it, it doesn't look quite nearly as intimidating as it sounded when we were discussing this episode.
It's not that difficult, and that's the beauty. We try to show you something that you actually could do, and actually isn't that expensive. And in fact, to me, it's the cheapest way to propagate a plant. If you go buy this plant, you're going to spend 10 bucks. If you take some cuttings, you basically get them for the time that you put into it.
Sure, and I think that's a really popular way to go nowadays, is to try to get as much value as you can out of everything that you do. So really all you need is a little bit of this sphagnum moss. Do you have to use moss, or could you use something else?
You probably could even use, if you wanted to like boil the old Spanish moss or something. To me, that'd be more work than it'd be effective, but the sphagnum moss is not too expensive. You can buy it for $3 or $4 in a container at the local nursery, and it's gone up in price. I remember when it was a whole lot cheaper, but today it's a little bit more expensive, but still, I mean, I used 1 handful. You could see I could get probably, 20 handfuls out of that bag?
Oh yeah, you could probably do this at least 30 times out of this bag. So. And what do we, I know you brought this plant up here on the table for a reason, and I'm trying to figure out what are we going to do with this?
Well, our technical assistant actually brought that up, and she did that because this was also taken by cuttings, and it's been cut back probably 20 times.
Okay.
And this pothos just keeps on coming out. It's like keeps on keeping on.
This thing must do really good in low light conditions. Huh?
It's a great indoor plant, as is the croton. Now the croton gives you some nice color, where the pothos just gives you the green.
Sure. Well, I guess depending on the setting, actually maybe together they would look really good too.
Yeah, and that's nice. This will actually take more shade or more of a dark area.
Yeah.
This needs probably a brighter area in your home.
Okay.
So that's something to consider.
Sure. So a little semi bright location for this one, and then a darker location would be okay for this guy.
Sure, and they both make great house plants. This makes a nice landscape plant outside in the warmer areas of the country, or in the cooler areas, you'd have to have it in a greenhouse or somewhere protected.
Okay, so we've got the crouton,
The
the croton, and the pothos.
Croton, or Codium variegatum, if you want to know the Latin name.
Well, that's...
And of course we have the mint, which also I think is just great. I love having mint for tea, and in fact I like to chew on it. Sometimes just I put it into salads, and people don't think about it, but you can cut all these leaves up, and for the last 3 or 4 days I've been chewing on mint every time I go around it, just because I go, it's here, and it's near, and it's going to be something I can eat.
Sure, and folks, I have been standing next to him for at least 15 minutes now, and I can smell the woofle and bent, so I'm a happy camper. So,
And if you want that, make sure you do the same thing that we're doing. What do we need to tell the people?
well, again, if you like our segments, please hit the like button. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel, and we look forward to entertaining you with different gardening aspects each and every week.
Hit subscribe.
Hit subscribe.